there would be an apocalyptic move, that it will mean a new exodus for the Israeli Jews, and still is refusing to be held accountable for what led to the catastrophe, to the Nakba. So my question to both of you, and I guess you would choose who wants to start answering the question, is what do you think of the right of return for Palestinians, and how do you see the right of return as building into a vision of a once democratic state for all, rather than as a threat to the existence of Israeli Jews?
I will start. So kind, Gideon.
No, we start with the light stuff, right of return. So you take the light stuff and I'll get to the real core.
Okay. Yes, I think that in the hindsight of 70 years since 1948, we have a very clear idea what lies behind the official Israeli rejection of the right of return. And this is not any worries about the capacity of the country to absorb new people. In fact, Israel is built on the notion that it can absorb many more millions only if they are Jews, or at least considered to be Jews. So it's not a question of capacity. It's a question of ideology. It's, to put it bluntly and simply, it's a racist position. We have a very good proof for this. There are 300,000 internal Palestinian refugees inside Israel. And even the claim that a return of Palestinians would change the demographic balance between Jews and Palestinians does not stand the test of proof, because these Palestinians are citizens of Israel. So allowing them to return to their villages would not change the demographic balance between Jews and Palestinians inside Israel. So why doesn't Israel not allow these Palestinians to return? And it would never allow these Palestinians, not even one of them, to return. And this has to do with a settler colonialist ideology, which totally excludes the native population, whether the ones who are still there, or those under occupation, or those who were expelled from any equal status, either as a human being or as a citizen in the Jewish state. So I think one has to understand that the basic rejection of the right of return is, I would say, the consequence or inevitable outcome of the Zionist ideology. The same ideology that led Israel to expel these people is the same ideology that prevents them from coming back to their homeland. So I think where this was maybe wasn't very clear in recent years, I think now we have an easier task in a way in showing that. I would add, and with this I would end, and then maybe we can develop it a bit later on. I would add another aspect that sometimes escapes the attention of anyone who's engaged in conversation about the right of return. I recall a public debate in TV I had with the late Pundak. What was his first name? The young one. Ron Pundak. He was one of the architects of the Oslo Accord. And we were debating the right of return. And he said something very honest from his perspective. He said, you do realize that even if it would have been possible for Palestinian refugees to return, most of Israel would look like Wadi Ara. Wadi Ara is one of the places of concentration where Palestinian citizens live today. There are three places, the Nakab, the Galilee, and in the east, Wadi Ara. And I said, even if it's true, what's wrong with that? I mean, I really enjoy seeing Palestinian villages. And he really did not understand he didn't think I was honest. He really thought it couldn't be that someone who grew as an Israeli Jew would like to see Israel with an Arab landscape, with even an Eastern Mediterranean landscape. This is why the Zionist movement brought not only European immigrants, but also European trees to cover the Palestinian villages and was very reluctant to bring Jews from the Arab countries because they were Arabs and they had to de-Arabize them, which they did quite successfully. I think that's also part of this. It's not only not accepting the accountability for what they did to the Palestinians. It's not only protecting the Jewish nature of the State of Israel. It's continuing the fabrication that Israel or Palestine is not part of the Arab world and not part of the Middle East, which lies at the very heart of this attitude.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wish I had such a crowd back home. Things would have been so much better and easier. Ever since I remember myself, even in times in which I was still a good boy Israel or a good boy Tel Aviv, when I did the right things and I served in the army and even worked with Shimon Peres, which is even worse, I can tell you that I was exposed to spreading fears. Everything was fearful. The 67 borders, Ilan, you remember, were defined by Abba Eban as Auschwitz borders, not less than this. Swine flu was presented in Israel as an existential threat. The regime in Israel throughout the years, and especially the current government, but also others, based their survival, based their ideology on spreading fears. And everything was always represented to us, even as children, as enemy. All the Arabs want to throw us to the ocean. Gamal Abdel Nasser should be compared to Adolf Hitler, and we used to burn his puppet in Lag BaOmer. It's a Jewish holiday where we light fires. We used to burn a puppet of Nasser because he is such an enemy. He wants to throw all of us to the ocean. And the return was another subject, maybe the biggest subject of this fearful reality that we were living in. It was almost illegitimate to mention it at all. It's also today illegitimate to mention it at all, like it is illegitimate in Israel to dare to define yourself as non-Zionistic, God forbid. It is as illegitimate as to dare to claim that Palestinians and Israelis are equal human beings and the Palestinian people and the Jewish people gain or should gain the same rights. But the right of return was really dead demon. And I'm not surprised that Ron Pundak was reacting as he reacted. And this goes together hand with our main subject tonight, and this is the one-state solution. The one-state solution was perceived until 1-2 years as something that you don't talk about in any framework. I mean, this is far beyond logic. This is far beyond any kind of sanity. This is insane even to mention it, because it's very clear that the right of return and the one state go hand to hand, because finally it comes to the basic. And the basic is the basic question. Do we face two equal peoples with two equal rights, or we face a privileged people and another people? And the right of return is endangering the whole project, because all of a sudden we'll have to realize or to admit that we are not ready to go for equality, that there is a privileged people, that there is a chosen people, that Palestinians and Israelis are not exactly the same human beings. Because otherwise, how will we explain the fact that any one-third Jew or half Jew from Ethiopia can just take the first plane, land in Ben Gurion, and get the Israeli citizenship in the airport, while a Palestinian who was born or his family was born for decades and centuries can't even visit his family? How will we explain this if we will get to this dangerous path of equality, and the right of return had to be presented as the mother and father of all demons, because would we recognize this, we'll have to recognize equality. We'll have to recognize or realize that both peoples can bring anyone back to his homeland. In the Palestinian case, it's back to the homeland. In our case, it's to our, I don't know how to call it, new homeland. But in any case, it must be equal. So, in the last 1 or 2 years, I must say, there were first cracks in Israeli society. One state can be mentioned already. Don't misunderstand me, we are far, far, far away from any real discussion in Israeli society. Israeli society is living in total denial, and maybe we'll talk about it later, in total denial, in total blindness, moral blindness, totally disconnected with reality. I mean, I think if the Israeli society would have been an individual, it would really call for help. Because people who are so disconnected with reality might be dangerous, either to themselves or to their environment. And there are treatment. Not always it's hospitalization, but something must be done with those levels of denial, with those levels of living in an alternative reality which is totally disconnected with the real world, which is totally connected with what is happening half an hour away from our homes. So in the recent 1 or 2 years, people start to mention one state, and maybe the next step, it didn't happen yet, will be also mentioning the right of return, you know, maybe in a limited way. But by the end of the day, and this will be my final sentence, by the end of the day, don't misunderstand and don't be wrong. Israeli society doesn't deal with it. Israeli society has no interest, not in the occupation, not in the fate of the Palestinian people, not in equality, not in peace, obviously, which is off the table. Israeli society is now interested in totally different things, like the next vacation, the new car, career, money, nothing else but this, nothing else but this. And the best way to handle it is always to ask Israelis, what do you want? Where do you want to go? What do you want it to be in 10 years, in 20 years? And you will never get an answer, because there is no answer, because people don't discuss it. I remember still times when the joke was that 2 Israelis share 3 views, and today 3 Israelis hardly share 1 view. And this view will always be the nationalistic, racist, and many times also religious view. And the right of return is still something which is not only unacceptable, which is perceived and presented deliberately as life or death, as suicidal. The day that we will accept the return of 20 refugees will be the day of the end of the Jewish people.
Thank you. I think I wanted to pick up on Gideon's last comment about the fact that in the last 2 years there started to be a